Hello, everybody. It is another Wednesday, which means we're on YouTube and we are talking about book stuff. I've talked about a lot of things in videos so far, but one thing I have not covered is the most common mistakes I see in manuscripts that I get as an editor. I edit books for a living. That is all that I do, and I edit between 1 and 3 books a month, probably, depending on the length and the complexity and all that kind of stuff. But this is my full-time job, and this is all I do. So you can imagine how 1 to 3 books a month in a calendar year adds up to a lot of pages, many, many words edited. And in those pages, I've been doing this now as a freelancer for 10 years, and I've been editing books professionally for 20. And I tend to see the same mistakes over and over and over again in manuscripts. And so, what I want to take a few minutes to talk about today is how you might be on the lookout for these things and you might fix them in your own work. One of the most common mistakes that I see, I do a lot of historical fiction. I don't know if any of you are historical fiction writers, but if you're writing historical fiction, you're going to do a lot of research on the time period that you're writing in, right? And that research is time consuming. So if you are writing a book set in Napoleonic France, you're gonna read a lot of material about that time period. You're gonna get details on how people dressed and how people ate and all these sorts of things, and that's great. Those peppered in details in historical fiction are what really kind of subtly draw people in, and they make it believable, and you get people invested in your work that way. Now, what your historical fiction novel is not, however, is a history book. I'm not picking up a historical novel set in Napoleonic France to learn the exact factual history down to every last detail and a timeline of Napoleonic France. The history is your backdrop. The historical detail you pepper in for realism. And I mean pepper in. If I see an entire paragraph in your manuscript explaining how people did whatever thing in Napoleonic France, I'm probably tuning out. The historical detail is always in service of the plot and is always in service of your character development. So I know you want to dump that information somewhere. Dump it in a journal, pepper it into your novel. Speaking of info dumps, yeah, don't do that. You have a few pages to grab a reader's interest, and I mean a few pages. When you think about how many books there are today and how many books an avid reader probably has on their bedside table, you've got maybe 5 pages. You do not want those first 5 pages to be all the backstory and a big info dump, and then you launch into the story. No. You have to hit them like a car wreck in those first 5 pages and get them into the story. And, so this is not the place for a lot of backstory. Now, there is a place for backstory. It's in the rest of your manuscript woven in throughout as a thread. When it would not make sense for a character to behave this way without the backstory, well, then okay. You better put some of that in there. But what you don't want is a long info dump backstory yarn in your first 5 or 10 pages of your book. You're just going to lose people. Another thing that I notice about writers, so many of the writers that I work with have this habit. You'll get to a scene in the book that's not working. And this happens. You write a scene and it's one way in your mind and then it comes out a different way on the paper and it's just not working for whatever reason. A lot of times a writer will put in a character's mouth the problem that they're having with their own scene. I edited a great novel. It was a fantastic novel. This was like 10 years ago. But there was this one scene in it that was just going, there was this breathless chase, and they're trying to find somebody who I think she'd been kidnapped or something, and they're going after her, and they finally got in the lead, but there's all of this scene is just, I'm page after page after, I'm like, what? Why is this taking so long? And at one point in the manuscript, a character actually said in dialogue, why is this taking so long? And I was like, bingo, there you go, writer. There's your issue. A lot of times we will subconsciously put in our characters' mouths what we know is not working about the scene. And so watch for that. When you read your pages back, watch for that. It is someone saying, why is this taking so long? Why is this taking so long? Hey, this scene is probably dragging, and I can probably cut a quarter or a third or half of it and get us there a whole lot more quickly. Another thing that I find in books a lot is dry dialogue tags. He stated, that is part of a police report. Now, if you're writing a crime novel, a dialogue tag like that might actually work. You might have a police report in your crime novel. But for the most part, you want to do with your dialogue tags something a little bit different. You want to help flavor in some personality there. You want to put some energy in that. When it gets really dry and boring, again, you're going to tune people out. Work on your dialogue tags. And this is the writing advice that everybody, any writing course you take, any magazine article you read, any workshop you sit in, anything, show, don't tell, right? Show, don't tell. I come across this one a lot more, I find, in memoir than I do in the fiction books, and maybe I'm just lucky. I think that when people are writing memoir, they feel like they don't have any creative license, and they have to, first I was born, then I went to school, then I, moved to Machu Picchu, then I came back, etc., etc. You have the license in a memoir to paint scenes, so do that. Almost every memoir you see professionally published will have a note, in the beginning, like, I changed these names for confidentiality. That's okay to do. Or, this is the best of my recollection. That's what a memoir, that's the difference between a memoir and an autobiography, right? In a memoir, it is your memory. Memory is faulty. As long as you tell the truth as you understand it, you can create scenes in your memoir. And a lot of times that's going to end up being much more engaging than just giving a chronology of, here's what happened next, here's what happened next, here's what happened next. Paint a scene for me. When you met that person who changed your life, paint that scene for me. Show me that. Sit down, do the work of remembering, because that's what memoir is, and paint that scene for me. I want to taste the food. I want to smell the room. I want to see this person and their weird teeth, or, whatever it is. Get visual with it. A book is words on a page, but it's also sitting there with a paper brick and, seeing things in your mind. Your reader won't see things in their minds if you don't show them. That's another common mistake I see in manuscripts. Oh, this one is just purely technical, but it drives me absolutely bonkers. And I know that book Twitter sometimes likes to debate this one, but to my mind, there is no debate. 2 spaces after a period? No, not appropriate. 1 space after a period is what is appropriate. Every manuscript I get, I go through before I edit a word, and I do a search for 2 spaces, and I replace it with 1. If you want to do your editor a favor, skip those 2 spaces and put 1. I know we all took, high school typing, and they said put 2 spaces after a period and all this stuff, and there's debate over the merits of it. And it's no. The standard rule in publishing these days, in 2020 and 9/10 or whatever day it is today, I have no idea. 2 spaces after a period is not the standard. 1 space after a period will get it done. If you have questions for me about how to fix your manuscript or what's the best way to do something, I am always available for that. You can email me. You can visit my website, which is somewhere around this frame. You can leave me a comment below. Love that. You can tweet me. I'm on Twitter at Cincy Bookworm. If you find me on LinkedIn, you can ask me there. I'm all over the internet, and you can find me there, and you can ask me, and I'm always happy to help. So, trust your instincts. That's the other. Before I go, I want to tell you this. Most times when a writer comes to me and wants me to edit their book, and we have a conversation at the beginning, they will tell me, this part of it is bugging me, or, I don't think this part of it is working correctly right now. And most of the time, when I get through their manuscript and see it as a whole, I get to the end and I say, you know what? Your instinct for that was dead on. That part in the middle, it really was dragging. Flashing back and forth in time that way, it really was confusing. I think some writers have trouble trusting that instinct. Trust your gut. Your gut usually knows, and it won't steer you wrong. Now, that doesn't mean that you have all the tools in your toolbox to correct the things in your manuscript. That is why you hire an editor, a book doctor, someone like me, to help you see those things and also kind of give you a roadmap to fix it. Because sometimes when we're right on top of something, we can't find the solution. It takes someone else stepping in from the outside and taking a bird's eye view and saying, yeah, you know what? That's where you went off track. That's where you lost it. You had a good feeling there. You knew it wasn't working. It's not working. And here's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 things you can do to fix it. So, when in doubt, ask for help. That's what us editor types live for. That's our whole raison d'etre. So, happy reading. Keep writing, no matter how hard it seems. Stay tuned, and I'll talk to you next time.